tell us a little bit more about what that was like initially, just whatever you remember about coming from St. Gerald's to St. Paul's initially?
Well, initially it was the size of the church. St. Gerald's was rather small, and St. Paul's was a much larger church with, larger pews and larger congregation. And that was kind of different. Like one of the things that I had the most problem with, as I mentioned earlier, was music. And other than that, I didn't find it too uncomplicated. It was far. I mean, I had to travel to get here. But other than that, I don't think anything else was really too awkward.
And then I understand St. Gerald's was closed for the purpose of integration with St. Paul's.
Yes.
So what was it like?
It wasn't not for St. Paul's.
For St. Paul's?
No, it was closed for integration, and there were three churches that they called themselves dividing. Dividing. If you lived in this geographical area, you were to go to St. Andrew's. This geographical area was to go to St. Stephen's, and this geographical area was to come to St. Paul's.
Do you think that people realized that had sort of an implication as far as members of a certain race going more to one church or another? Was it done for that purpose, or was it kind of not realized until later on?
I think what they were trying to do was to actually, if you had 100 people, I think they were trying to send a third there, a third here, and a third there. I think that's what they were attempting to do. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to make it convenient, and that's why they said geographically, this area, here, here, here. So I think that was what the geographics were. Mm-hmm. But they were actually trying to get equal numbers.
Equal numbers of people?
For each place, yeah.
Okay. So when you came to St. Paul's, was it already a pretty integrated congregation, or no not up until that point?
Not at all.
What was that experience like in integrating the church? Was it relatively peaceful? Were there some people who were opposed to that? What was that like? What was the general atmosphere?
It was nothing like what you would think integration is as you watch it on TV and all that. It was nothing like that at all. It was just, this is where we were supposed to go to church, and we just went to church there. There wasn't any rioting, there wasn't any picketing, nothing like that. None whatsoever.
Do you feel like that was different compared to what was going on in the city at the time? Like, was that unique in the fact that, everyone was getting along well?
No, because when I grew up, it was always integrated. All the schools had always been integrated. The major high schools, John Harris High and William Penn High, were always integrated.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Could you talk to us, you mentioned that a little bit in the other interview too, but kind of how you got to know Nancy and maybe the nature of that relationship, both when you were younger, but then maybe how that's changed over time, because I know you were alluding to that a little bit.
She was, I think we were pretty much the same age, and she always sat in the pew that was in front of the one that I sat in, and being teenagers, how you kind of look at each other and you kind of see what each other has on and how your hair's fixed, and that was that kind of thing. We'd say hello to each other, or sometimes we'd wave to each other, stuff like that. But coming back after in 2012, we're mature adults, so we were able to sit down and say, "Do you remember? Well, I remember some, and she doesn't remember a lot. I remember some. She doesn't. I don't remember a lot. But I just think it was just really wonderful that I was able to recognize her and communicate with her and talk to her about the old church."
Mm-hmm. Seeing youth coming up in today's church, do you think do you see any similarities between their experiences now and your experiences then, what they're going through, or do you feel like there are different things within the church that they're facing today that weren't present in the past?
I don't know that there's different things. I know that how that all plays out is different. We talked a little bit about that earlier too, about when we were younger and you wanted to be confirmed, there was actually things that you had to do. There were steps that you had to take. There was education, there was classes. And I don't see that happening as much now as it did then. And so I'm not sure that they are as grounded as they could be in terms of grounded in their faith, grounded in religion, grounded in the Episcopal Church.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you've been involved with Christian education for quite some time. So did you see anything shift during that time that's kind of led to that tradition of maybe today's youth not having to go through those types of stuff?
Yeah, I see all the things that they do in schools. I know that with our classes now that we try to have in church for Sunday school, you're in competition. You're in competition with soccer, you're in competition with football, you're in competition with lacrosse. I mean, you're just in competition with all that stuff because they have a lot of their programs on Sundays, and the parent is kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Do you make your child go to church, and then they miss out on the games that their peers are in and that they're having fun and they really want to do? So we're in competition. And so we have taken the stand, you just get them any way you can. Mm-hmm. So if they want to come once a month for an hour, you're happy they're there, because maybe something will happen. And also, I think the fact that now there's no prayer in school. Prayer can't be mentioned in school. I guess Jesus can't be mentioned in school. God can't be mentioned in school. They're so busy now taking all that out of school. And I think that kind of ties everybody's hands also. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times, if you didn't get it at home, you got something in school, and now you don't.
Mm-hmm. With that in mind, what did your Sundays look like when you were growing up?
Up in the morning and out to church. And, you went back home and you did some things. But it wasn't one of those heavy days. There wasn't anybody, the stores were open. We didn't have, the malls weren't open, grocery stores weren't open. There wasn't anything open on Sunday. It was all closed. So you had to do family things on Sunday. The movie theaters were open, so if there was a movie, maybe you could go to the movies. But you couldn't go to the mall. You couldn't go grocery shopping. So it was the family time, pretty much. You were home.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about a little bit about how institutionally in different places outside of church, how the church's influence has kind of been limited on that now. Like, how did the church kind of expand out from the building into other areas of life when you were younger? Like, you mentioned school and
Mm-hmm.
other places. Where did you see the influence of church other than the church when you were younger?
Basically home and school. Because we didn't have all the different programs they have now in terms of, feeding the hungry or, that kind of thing. We didn't have those kind of programs either. So it was basically home and school.
Mm-hmm.